Children are a mighty means of grace. Most everyone I know can get behind that. Believing it is one thing, really honoring that truth is another. From time to time, it hits me how I am too much talk and too little sweat in that department. Because if children are vessels of what God has to give God's people, why are they not more a part of the services of worship that I help to design? And by more a part, I don't mean perform more often. I mean more engaged as a worshiper. Lately, I've been trying to take it up a notch. I serve a small congregation, and many Sundays, Judd is the children's moment. He's not always impressed with what I offer, and understandably, because I don't think everything I offer is all that impressive. But for this Sunday, I ordered a book. I don't think I'll be hitting it out of the park, but a single or a double would be nice. This book is delightful. It's called What If Everybody Did That? It follows a young boy through a series of events, a trip to the zoo, to the grocery store, to Grandma and Grandpa's, to the swimming pool. And at each of these places, he tells us about something that he does. The illustrations, which are dynamite, make it clear that his decision might in fact be consequential. Sure, the sign says, "Please do not feed the bears," but a little popcorn won't hurt. My favorite moment is Uncle William's wedding. The young boy licks the frosting on the wedding cake. It has not yet been cut. He tells us it's just a little lick. At which point he looks up to see a lady glaring at him over her glasses. She very much looks the part. What if everybody did that? She asks. What if everybody did that? That may be one of the ways that Jesus' adversaries have expressed their concern. If everybody did as Jesus was doing, God only knows what would happen. Luke gives us the impression that as the crowds grow, so too does the controversy. The longer Jesus ministers, the more rules he reinterprets. A crowd has gathered here at the beginning of chapter 12. Jesus has gone inside for a meal, and by the time he resurfaces, the number of people amounts to thousands. Thousands of people are there simply to hear what he has to say. And as though Jesus were a cover band, some guy in the crowd shouts out a request, "Get my brother to share the wealth." I would love to know what Jesus was thinking. Sounds like a personal problem, friend. Or, next question, please. It's not a press conference, though. This is Jesus doing what Jesus was born and anointed to do. Bringing good news to the poor, proclaiming release to the captives and recovery of sight to the blind, letting the oppressed go free, proclaiming the year of the Lord's favor. This is Jesus bringing the kingdom near and asking us to enter in with all that we have and all that we are. Which means dealing with greed, evidently. After speaking to him, the guy hoping for his day on Judge Judy, he speaks to them, the crowd. Guard yourself against all of it, he says. I've yet to meet someone who is comfortable thinking of themselves as greedy. Greedy is how we describe the antagonist in Disney movies or white-collar criminals. But Jesus brings it up. And the thousands listening are not Cruella de Vil's and Bertie Madoff's. Luke says that the disciples are present, and the disciples alone at this point bring diversity. Some are affluent, others are not. Apparently, greed is an equal opportunity infector. In the story that Jesus tells, greed gets a hold of a farmer. The primary symptom is foolishness. Foolishly, he believes that what he has stored will keep indefinitely. Foolishly, he thinks that there is such a thing as all ease and no strife. Foolishly, he has this conversation about his life with himself and himself only. When the land produces abundantly, he thinks, self, time to build a bigger barn. Not time to discern what more I can put into God's hands. Interesting. Because proportional giving was a thing back then. A tithe didn't make you generous. A tithe, a tenth of whatever you earned or produced, was just the law-abiding thing to do. It ensured that the faith community was funded and that others in need were cared for. Any wealth added meant a greater cut off the top for God. That was how it went. How about now, in our time? Richard Stearns is the president of World Vision. He recently wrote an article in which he threw out the number 65 billion. 65 billion per year is what it would take to end extreme global poverty within a generation, so the experts say. He does some math, and what he computes continues to blow my mind. Churches in America could do that. We could come up with that 65 billion on an annual basis. We could end global poverty in a generation if we were, like our spiritual ancestors, proportional givers. He says it's time to tithe, and he's not a pastor, so don't accuse him of saying that because he wants your money. Time to tithe, that's the name of the article. Tithing, he says, is God's method of giving you and me the privilege of supporting and participating God's work in the world. What if everybody did that? If everyone who said that they were Christian received this method of proportional giving as a gift from God and then made it our practice after clean water for everyone, after ending severe hunger, after defeating malaria, after a basic education for all children, after providing 250 million jobs, our churches would have $435 billion left over each and every year. Friends, talk about abundance. Even then we would be fools, though, to build a bigger barn. I think that's the Jesus wisdom. Why? Because there is no joy in life lived for bigger barns. At least not of the deep and lasting kind. The joy is in supporting and participating in God's work in the world, more and more and more, until death isn't such a terrible thing. It's a matter of following our investment. You see, that is the real trouble with the foolish farmer. He isn't looking forward to a single thing in the life to come. Not one dimension of the quality of life that Jesus is describing sounds appetizing to him. An 18th century commentator put it in this way: in the very night in which he had finally settled all his plans, his soul was called into the eternal world. What a dreadful awakening of a soul long asleep in sin. He is now hurried into the presence of his Maker. You almost feel bad for the guy. But don't. Let him be what he is, which is a character in a story. He's a character through whom we are asked to reckon with our own bouts of foolishness. Maybe I'm in for a rude awakening. Maybe I need to develop the habits and relationships transferable to the kingdom. Growing more generous is God's will for us, and a means of grace for the world God loves. Most everyone I know can get behind that. Believing it is one thing. Really honoring that truth is another. It helps to live life alongside of those who are looking for life in the places that God calls us to look. It helps us to have the conversation about our future with others. It helps me, I know, to recall whose company I enjoy the most, the folks who have been bread for my journey. Without exception, they are not only generous, but intentional about giving more, either by budgeting for it or simply abiding in the understanding that storing up treasures for themselves is A, exhausting, and B, a joy sucker. These people do not have a joy problem. Quite the opposite. Like our children, they are a mighty means of grace. That book, What If Everybody Did That, ends with a twist. Having gone to many places and counting himself the exception to many, many rules, the young boy comes home and decides to give his mom a hug. This time the question, what if everybody did that, stirs a different response. I hope that Judd, that rising first grader in my congregation, will smile. And if Hannah is there, that her heart will also be made glad, even though she's now reading young adult literature. If not, I hope my own 2 feet find fresh traction. Along this way, we have chosen joy comes with growing rich toward God. There is no simple formula, but proportional giving is a good place to start. It guards against greed. So friends, dig out the tax returns. Be bold to calculate what you are putting in the hands of God. Set a goal or 2. Death won't be so miserable, and life, well, it'll be life. Amen.